Hello, everybody. We are live here. Those of you who have joined us before know it just takes a minute here for me to also get Instagram going live because it sets up a little differently. So Instagram is carrying over now as well. So we are here and welcome. So first off, thank you to Tracy-Ann very much for being here. I'm excited about this conversation. Always just wonderful to see your bright smiling face to begin with, but then to be able to have a conversation makes it even better. And of course, thank you to everyone who is joining us, whether you are joining us live or you are joining us watching this recorded. We appreciate you letting us be a part of your day or evening, whatever time that you're consuming this content. And we're very hopeful that something that we say will resonate with you in a way that's going to help create some type of positive impact. And that just always really excites me. So that said, Tracy-Ann, tell everybody who you are, a little bit about what you do, and then we'll just talk.
Awesome. Well, first of all, Deb, I love being around you and with you. You have just incredible energy, and you're so authentic. So, for all the listeners out there, Deb and I've got to know each other over the last few months, and it's very, they say there's two kinds of people. There's people who suck your energy, and there's people who give you energy. Well, Deb is definitely the give you energy. So love being here with you, love being here with everyone that's live with us. And again, as Deb said, thanks for being with us. It's great to be here live with Deb. So with that, a little bit about me. So born in Zimbabwe, third world country, which I think in itself is, there's a lot of conversations I could have about that. And then immigrated over to the States when I was 28 years old, and actually 27. And it's, had a great life. Got into tech, got into corporate, have built community, which I have a lot to say about because community is really, really good. And as of recently, I left corporate in February of this year. And having been a prior entrepreneur, a successful one at that, I decided to do what I wanted to do as part of my legacy, which was I now am CEO of Corporate Athlete Academy. I've had my nonprofit for 16 years, doing leadership mentoring programs. And I just did my first song, my first single, recording artist, and wrote it December the 21st, which I attributed to my father because it was called Ignite the Warrior, and my dad is my warrior. And I had an opportunity to actually share it with him, which is a funny story if we get to it. And then, just doing a whole bunch of entrepreneurial endeavors is what I would call them. And I'm having way too much fun. Okay. Way too much fun. I'm up at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. My husband's like, what are you doing? I'm like, you don't understand. I'm having too much fun.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. So it's good.
So there's a lot of pieces there. And as you said, so I was in my mind going like, okay, I can't address them all at once. This happens sometimes. People say things and then I'm like, oh, there's so many things I want to talk about. I want to focus first on, because I think people hear the corporate athlete, academy, and that term can be, I have an idea of where that comes from based on our conversations. But I think that will connect also with the life that's brought you to here and the life that you intend to live forward because it carries into your mission. So I think to start, would you mind sharing a little bit about that, what that name means and what that mission is all about?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just such a great question. So thank you for asking it, because I think people can get confused about what does it really mean, And when I say corporate athlete, I'm talking to everybody that's out there. I was an athlete at school, and we all know that to master any craft in our life, it takes practice, it takes resilience, it takes perseverance. But for me, it stems from mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been, been a leader in corporate for years and years, and my passion has always been around getting people to this place of what I call their happiness, their success, their peak performance. Okay. And when I moved over here, because I moved over here on my own, my family is all still in South Africa, actually. And my mom used to ask me a question, one question. It was always the same. Are you happy? And when I think about corporate athlete, I think about, are you living your best life? Okay. It's about getting to peak performance, but it's not just in your career. It's about how you live your life. What are your values? Are you healthy? How's your state of mind? Right? I mean, we could talk a lot about the statistics that are out there right now with, the younger generation and, mental health and all that. But for me, it's about this mindset of how do we help people remove the blockers and the obstacles that stop them from doing what they really, truly want to do with their life. And that is what it means to me. It's so much more than, let's be good at our jobs. Skills you can learn all day long. It's about the behavioral training and this consistency that it takes to really master life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And to me, that's exciting. Like, if you can help people, I'll give you an example. I started our nonprofit, Rebuild Character, in 2008. And it was a conversation. I went out to coffee with someone and she said, listen, you have this really big community. I have people who want to be mentored by this community. What do you think? Great, perfect. We got an executive coach. We had 8 people who decided to be mentors in the community. They came together. And at the end of the first year, we sat there in this little boardroom. I swear, there was 8 of us or whatever. And we went around the table to each of these mentors and we're like, okay, what kind of impact do they think they've had? And I'll never forget it as long as I live. I still know this person and I know where they are in their life right now. And he said this: my entire life has changed. I've lost 40 pounds. I just got engaged. I just got promoted. He's now a COO, doing exceptionally well in his life, his career. He's happy. And that to me is like my mission in life. Like, there was probably these tiny little, I call them the 1%, 2% tweaks, right? Tiny little things that we helped him with that released the fear or released the barriers or whatever was holding him back. But that to me is, I believe, the reward of life, is being able to get people to live their best life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I was an athlete as well. And so I had, it obviously stirred up some very specific thoughts for me from my perspective of what being an athlete was, and also from my perspective of doing a lot of corporate consulting and what I saw. And so I kind of started to put some things into my head about what I thought it meant, but I thought I want to hear from you. And the one thing that I heard you emphasize that it did for me as well, as soon as I heard that term, was the practice.
Yeah.
Right? And across all areas of our lives, when we want to work on the things that we're not able to do as well as we'd like, or improve the things that we are able to be successful already at, right? Whatever it comes to, when there's something that you want to create some type of improvement, practice, 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 right? And in order to do that, a lot of times it is that mindset piece of recognizing I need to practice. I'm not at where I'm going to be, right? In the and I did a lot of different sports. I did soccer, softball, basketball. I loved them all. Originally that had been my plan. I was going to play all of these diverse sports. Got into running, and it kind of it just things shifted, that it was like, okay, you're going to focus on running. And in the running community, as in the swimming community, and a lot of those individual where you're as an individual performing, obviously it's still a team sport. But, you have what's called the PR, PB, people respond, call it different things, but your personal best. And that's what you're going to keep aiming for. And while you do want to hit all of these other, you want to hold the school record or the county record or all of these other things that you are going to aim for. But ultimately, each time you go out there, you're going to look to do your personal best. Sometimes your personal best isn't your overall personal best. It's just your personal best for that day in
Yeah.
those conditions, in how
Yeah.
you're feeling. But it's that striving to do more. And I think when you're talking about that's what you want to help people to do, to understand that there's areas that they can work on that they might be struggling with, and there's areas that they can work on where they're already being successful, and to further polish those. And the other thing that you said that immediately evoked an emotion in me was that mindset piece. So I was an excellent runner. I was very successful. I did set records. I, did a lot of the things. I didn't go as far as I believe I could have gone if I didn't start to defeat myself on the start line. And there were a number of different reasons for it, which really at this point, there's no point in dissecting, because I think the bottom line is that you've got to kind of go into that thing, whatever it is. You're a new leader. It's a new team. It's a new company, new process, new product, changes, things that are taking place, right? All of those things can be symbolic for stepping up to that start line. It's a new race. It's a new event. You're starting something. And so willingness to practice and having that mindset that I'm going to do the best that I can in this circumstances with what's going on around me. And I think those are just really critical pieces. And for you to be able to help people to see that, it affects change individually, it affects change across the organization. And then, as you noted, that starts to ripple out into your personal life, because you see results and you see this a version of yourself that you would like to see. That doesn't mean you've reached perfection. We're not going to.
That's
We're
right.
going to reach a degree of consistency and calm focus in what can I learn today? What can I learn now? So I think that really resonates. I mean, for me specifically in the relations that I have to it with the sports and the corporate world, but I think everybody can relate to that. Something you want to do, and it's
Yeah.
going to take practice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love what you said about that starting line, because here's what is really important. And by the way, I was a runner too, and I believe the same thing. I believe I could have gone a lot further. And that starting line defeat was my Achilles heel. Here's what I've seen a lot of, and we don't talk about this enough. The number one blocker for people is their own personal self-confidence and self-esteem. And when people feel prepared, when they feel educated, when they're focused, when they have the training, they get more confidence and their self-esteem goes up. And all those things are related. When someone starts a new job, for instance, I always say to them, first of all, you read the book, The First 90 Days. I read that book every time I start a new job, first 90 days. And then I go on to, you need to understand that for the first 6 months, this job has to consume your life. Because there's an education that has to happen. There's an immersion that has to happen. It's like anything, like you've got to immerse yourself, and you've got to really, because you'll always feel behind, because when you start in anything you do, you feel behind everybody, right?
Right.
I mean, Deb, you and I are surrounded by incredibly talented people, with the community that we're involved in. And I'm always feeling like, man, I got to do better, because everyone's so good. That's how you should feel. But when you immerse and you do all those things, you get to that 6 months and you're like, oh my gosh, look how far I've come. Look how, look how much I know, right? It's amazing. So to your point, it's the consistency, it's the training, it's the focus. And that then builds on, the self-esteem and, all those other areas that come with it, right?
Yeah.
Which leads people to happiness. No one
Yeah.
feels good if they don't feel good about themselves and their life.
Absolutely. And I think there can be a misnomer when it comes to trying to achieve excellence. And I interpret excellence as meaning being the best that you can be at that moment, right?
Right.
Excellence doesn't mean you've accomplished every goal you're ever going to accomplish.
Yeah.
But sometimes we think of it as you've got to like dive in and go 150,000%. Obviously, that's a warped percentage since it doesn't
Yeah.
exist on everything. And if we follow along with the sports analogy, because I think there's a lot of symbols that you can unpack there.
Yeah.
If you're trying to improve, right? So if we talk about as a runner, if you're trying to improve, you can't go out on the track and run all day long and then go in the weight room and lift all night long. There's pacing you have to do. You have to be strategic about it. You've got to, focus on one thing at a time. And you also pause, right? If you don't know if something's not working and you don't know how to use a weight machine or you don't know how to use something at work or do something at work, you pause and you say, there's more information I need. You don't kind of just proceed to push harder in what could be the incorrect approach.
That's right.
Right. And so that's in alignment with that as well, is that first 90-day period is about practice and consistency. It's also about the pause. It's giving yourself rest to assess if what you're doing is working, rest to take time to look around and ask people for help, and to make sure that you don't burn out. And very similar to in life. And I think for me, I think this would be a cool segue to talk about your move at 27 to a very different location, right? I've lived in the same region my whole life. I've traveled. It's not that I felt trapped here. I very much love the region and there's multiple reasons I wanted to stay here. That said, having never done something like that, really like picked up and rooted my life someplace else, I can't relate on that level, only in that I can imagine what it must be like. But you didn't just take a big move. You took a big cultural move. You left behind family. Um, so a lot of this stuff that you're teaching people for their first 90 days, I'm sure played out a little bit for you in your first 90 days in your move.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I got to tell you, I'm not sure at 53 I could do it again. At
Fair enough.
27, maybe I had the stamina for it, but this is how that goes. I had no intention of moving to the United States. There was not even 3 months prior, I was not moving. And I came, my leader at the time said, and by the way, he believed in me more than I believed in myself. He said, I want to send you to training in Chicago. I want you to open up a separate division in South Africa for us, but you need to go for training in Chicago. And I left the boardroom and every single person in the office said, don't do it. The last person who did this got fired. No joke. No joke. What did I do? I did it. So I go to Chicago. I'm here for 6 weeks. And, he'd call me every day, like you've got to be better than everybody else. It was, the typical, rah-rah sessions. And I did very well. I went back home and I got a call from the CEO of the company. And he said, we want you to come and work for us here in the US. So from the time of that training, and I'll never forget it, right? I came in the February. I moved to New York, never been to New York in my life, moved to New York in May 28th. And I arrived at 2:00 in the morning to a corporate apartment that I had no idea where I was, had never been to New York, had no clue. And of course, the only thing that actually I own is like a passport that says like, this is who I am. The suitcase was like 5 times bigger than me. And I'm walking up the stairs with this like big fat green bag. And I'm thinking, oh my word, like I'm like a nobody in New York, right? And that was sort of the next couple of years of my life. It was lonely, first of all.
Yeah.
I had to be incredibly resilient, to learn new ways, new culture, new city. And then, I was there for a short period of time, and they moved me to Chicago, and then I went to San Francisco. I lived in 6 cities in 6 years. No joke. And an incredible opportunity. I feel so blessed. I wake up every day feeling so blessed that I live in the United States. And I believe that that is without a doubt one of the reasons for my drive is the privilege and the honor that I have been given, the opportunity. Because when you come from a third world country with a lot of political issues, and of course every country does, but you really appreciate the value of what we have here. This opportunity, the opportunities we have to have our own companies, and just the opportunities have such a big impact in our communities. It's really unless you've been through that, it's really difficult to understand. And I'll tell you, it takes resilience at the same time.
I'm sure.
The first 2 years, I remember calling home, and not that I wanted to not be here, but you're lonely. You
Yeah.
don't have that sense of community. Nothing's familiar. I mean, I'd go into a store and go, I want Zap. I want Zap. And they'd go, we didn't know what Zap is. And, it was 7-Up. Or I'd go into a diner and start pouring the sugar over my fries because I thought it was salt. Yeah, I mean, I can't even explain, even some of the language. I say robot, you say traffic light. I say boot, you say trunk.
Oh,
I mean,
interesting.
there's just words, ways that you live your life. You go into a grocery store, things are in different places. I mean, it's really an entire new world.
Yeah.
So I will say, I believe that travel and experience different cultures and diversity of people and thought is such an incredible experience for anybody listening. Because one thing I can tell you, I am less judgmental as a human being because of it.
Mm. Yeah, I can only imagine. I'm the only thing I can even remotely liken to some of that experience is in 2012, I went to Costa Rica by myself in near Manuel Antonio Park, and I was at the recommendation of a friend, was going through a lot of life circumstances that were, turning me topsy-turvy, had not been a traveler, definitely not an alone traveler. Maybe I had gone to, like Niagara Falls, which is like, some hours up north, but really had not traveled a lot. And so I went to Costa Rica, was able to do this really budget trip with some help from her in terms of planning and stuff like that. Took a duffel bag. I was gonna be there for 10 days. Literally took a duffel bag with just like, shorts and shirts that I knew that I could like rinse out. Was like, I'm gonna just do this like as low key as possible. And the plane landed at night in the middle of Costa Rica, and so I'm driving on these, roads that are, I mean, you're literally, like, on the side of a cliff. They're not they were not well-kept roads. The guy was not concerned about the what not well-kept roads. He is driving through the dark. I have no idea. I mean, I hear animal sounds, which was not bothering me, but it was just, like, very surreal. Like, here I am, like, driving through the jungle, racing along. I can tell that there's a sheer drop off to the right here, and it's taking longer than I expected it to take. So of course your mind starts to wander, like, what if this wasn't the car I was supposed to get into? What's going on? Finally pull up at this place. And again, very dark. It had rained, which added to the effect. And because it was near the national park, a lot of the lights were shut down at night and stuff. And the gentleman who was supposed to be greeting me was not there. Something had happened, and he spoke more English, and I could speak some conversational Spanish, but not enough that I had a very wide vocabulary, right? Like I knew what phrases I needed to use to kind of get by and could kind of pick up on some things. And the gentleman that came out to greet me didn't really, I mean, he had like maybe a couple phrases, but really like we weren't, there was lack of communication. So I'm like, I had no idea what was happening other than he was trying to tell me. I found out the next day that the other gentleman couldn't make it and that the room that you were supposed to stay in the main hotel, the window had been broken. So I couldn't stay in that room. But I didn't know what he was saying other than he's pointing to the big hotels telling me we're not going there. And I'm confused, like what's happening because he's trying to take me off onto this
Oh.
trail that leads into the jungle. Okay. So the taxi cab takes off and I'm reaching for my phone in my pocket thinking like, okay, at least I have my phone, and realized I'd left my phone in the taxi. So now I'm trying to tell this gentleman that, with what English I could, with what Spanish I could, and what English he had, that like, I left my phone. And he's like, come on, we got to lead off into this path. You can't see anything. I just know it's a dark path leading into the jungle. And I'm thinking like, what am I supposed to do right now? So I just kind of trusted, and I'm thinking like back home, there had been some concerns from some family members of like, you're going to just travel to Costa Rica by yourself. And I was like, it'll be fine. And I'm thinking in my head like, oh, well, the taxi driver came back. He happened to see my phone in the back of the car, came back, gave it to me. Everything was fine. Wander into the woods, takes me into this little building that is literally in the middle of the jungle. And I go into the room, can't figure out how to turn the air conditioning on. So I'm just laying on the bed all night with this air conditioning pouring on me, not really knowing where I am. I didn't cry, but like that verge of crying because you're like so exhausted and you're like, I don't know what's happening. And then the morning light comes, right? The morning light comes and I look out my window and I am literally surrounded by the most lush, beautiful. There are, you
Oh.
know, all kinds of things happening outside my window, chameleons and monkeys. And I'm just like, this
Oh.
is crazy. I can't believe that I'm here. And I realize when I step out the front door of this building that I'm like very close to the hotel. It had felt much further away at night because the path wandered. And I also couldn't get a cell signal the night before, but I was able to find a spot and call home and say I'm here safely. The other gentleman was there and kind of filled me all in. But that initial feeling of like I'm wandering into the dark jungle right now,
Yeah.
for a moment without my phone, unable to get in touch with anybody. I
Ugh.
don't really know what this gentleman is saying to me. And then it ended up, like you said, you wake up and you feel blessed, but that uncertainty. And from being there though, and realizing, and I love it. I would go there again. It's just one of my favorite places in the world for so many reasons, but so many of the things that we take for granted here, the easy access to things
Yeah.
and medical care in and of itself, right? Where the
Yes.
medical care was in that area versus the type of medical care that I could get very quickly. And I do think of that. I think of, wow, that was such a beautiful, incredible land, but we really do have so much to be grateful for. And if we don't step out of our box, we can think about it theoretically, but we don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't imagine you living those years in a third world nation, really, that did have a lot of violent political
Yeah.
tension,
Yeah.
and what goes along with how you form your thoughts and how you live a life of love, which is the type of person you are when you're
Mhm.
surrounded by a situation where not everybody's on the love train.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Um, so
That's so
that's
funny that you say that because I had an experience yesterday, which I'll just share real quickly because it's sort of uh, it's part of this conversation that we're having. So I was on the treadmill yesterday. My husband and I were in the gym, and I just written a new song, and the song's about love and kindness. And I started to dance to it, and I just got this like wave of emotion. And he looked at me, and I started to cry. And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "I'm living my dream.
Mm.
Like I have wanted this since I was a little girl, and here I am living my dream." And I was just sobbing, like the tears were just rolling down, because that's what I want for everybody. I want them
Yeah,
to feel that,
yeah,
you know, that deep sense of just contentment, happiness, because that's really what life is about. Honestly, that's
yeah.
what it's about, you know.
Well, and I want to talk about the song, and I want to talk about it because I mean that's an area where we really deeply connect, and I think it
Yeah,
has to do with a lot of the way that we've perceived life. And though we had different backgrounds, we both had backgrounds that were filled with some uncertainty, right? For
yeah,
the settings that we were in, there was filled with some uncertainty, and there are different ways that people end up maneuvering through that. For me, it was very much an acute awareness of things, the highs and the lows. But I mean, I would just find myself fascinated by things that I think sometimes other people would be like, why are we stopping to look at the way that that flower is casting a shadow? But I'm just like, look how beautiful that is. So I think like it starts to make you very, very much just in touch with kind of like all these things going on, which is what brings out writing, particularly poetry, which is what songwriting is. And there are a handful of my poems that have been written as songs or that could become songs, but it's that feeling into the words, the words being able to capture something that you're feeling in a way that you feel like it communicates that. We can't always necessarily give the exact feeling we're feeling, but we can get close to it.
Yeah.
And when you feel that come to fruition, which is what you were experiencing when you had finished that song and were feeling such emotional joy and just overwhelm in a positive way from it. Yeah, it's because it's like it's you're able to take something that's inside of you and put it out into the world, right?
Yes.
Which is what we can do with art, with creation, with different acts. There's a variety of ways that people can use creativity.
Yeah.
But so that's what brought those tears for you, right? I mean, I've had similar experiences. I mean, the poetry book that I just got out, it has got poems in it from my entire life. And I had kind of picked and choose which ones I wanted to put in it to kind of give from a range across my life. But when I, got a picture, the first time I got a picture from somebody holding the book, that I'm like, now that's like my poems in somebody else's hands. Like my words are out there. The same thing. I was just, the tears were there because it's this connection. Like you talk about community, this connection, this community. We are all a community that's got a lot of things that need to be resolved, a community
Yeah.
that doesn't always agree, a community that needs to figure out a way to share resources so that everybody can be served and loved and cared for. But we're a community. And our poems and our songs and our gestures at simple places like the grocery store feed into that community. So
Yeah.
tell me about, for you, the song. And you said that I'm living my dream. What was the dream that was creating that song for you?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to just say to those that are live with us is uh, Deb, released her poems. And I want to congratulate Deb now because uh, there's a lot that goes into that, right? Having Deb brought up something for me. I used to read a significant amount of poetry when I was a young girl, and I had not read poetry probably since my 20s. Okay. And I bought Deb's book and I started those feelings that I used to have as a young girl when I used to read poetry really came back for me. That surged back for me. And it's vulnerable to release poetry, writing of expression, songs, right?
Yeah.
All of that is very raw and very vulnerable. But that is the beauty of being human.
Mm.
And most people go through life thinking they have to hide that. The reality is, it makes life beautiful when you don't. Those are the people we're typically connected to, we feel human with. And it really does. I truly believe it makes us less judgmental of each other when
Right.
we live in that kind of world of community, right? I'm a firm believer that love does heal. Love heals, right? And Deb and I've had a lot of conversations about kindness. In corporate, people would say to me, "You're too kind." I don't know what that means.
Mhm.
I don't know what too kind means.
Right.
So for me, as a young girl, I always lived in the state of, altruism, call it whatever you want, but the state of being able to be the human being I am, the love, the kindness, not necessarily feeling like I have to protect myself or I have to guard myself or I have to be someone that I'm not. Okay. And I don't know what the trigger was, But last year for me was, I'm going to attack my bucket list. I have had this desire since I was in my 20s to do all these things, right? Corporate Athlete Academy, right? Giving back to others, being true to myself,
Mm.
and being able to express myself through music and dance, and have impact on others, because I know that other people feel these things, right? So I have a song called Embrace Your Crazy. And that is all about, we're all a little crazy, guys. Embrace it, okay? And be who you want to be, you know? Uh, my song of love, it's love illuminates. And it's really about, there is a lot of hatred in the world. Embrace love, embrace kindness, and put it out there. It's amazing when you do that, how people respond,
Yeah.
because that's what people crave.
Yeah.
But everyone's so afraid to do that, except for Deb and I. We're not afraid.
I'll wear corniness like a crown. I'm good.
But, you know, it really has the power. And I've had, you know, a near-death experience at the age of 20, just before my 21st birthday. And that for me was a trigger of, when you have that kind of experience and you live through it, you know, you see the world differently, right? That you
Yeah.
actually got to live, first of all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of that, Deb, for me is why I'm just such a believer in being who you are, and putting that out there, and showing people love. People have a lot of trauma, they have a lot of emotion. You know, we're all carrying a certain level of scar, right? But it's, what do you do with that? Do you use that to advantage? Do you use that to the advantage of your community, of others? Because we can all heal together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That topic alone, that came up in two of the poems in the book. Two of the poems that I chose for the book, I talk about our scars being ways that we can guide other people, and it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to say, "I'm so grateful that that terrible thing happened to me." It's not about that. It's saying that I'm grateful that I'm able to use that terrible thing in a way
Yes.
that's going to create hope and positivity. We can still grieve for those difficult things that happened to us.
Yes.
Living forward and living truly into who we are, and embracing the light we can bring doesn't mean that we don't still look back and go like, "That really hurt. That
Yeah.
really hurt."
Yeah.
And you know, I love the singing, right? I think that song in general, song, poetry, I mean, hand in hand, right? Like people will say to me, "Oh, I don't really listen to poetry." I'm like, "Ah, but you listen to music?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Guess what? Those
It's the
song
same
lyrics are
thing. Yeah.
poems with music."
Yeah.
But again, I think for all of us to find the form, the art form, music and different music genres,
Yeah.
right? Like in my household alone, like I have 3 teenagers and the music genres are pretty varied, but the emotions that are evoked are very similar. Joy,
Yes.
excitement, happiness when they're listening to music that's their type that they like. So find that area that where you can connect, because you're connecting with whoever has produced that or whoever has written that, and it's speaking to you and it's
Yeah.
making you have that connection in a healthy way,
Yes.
right? Like, I think I listen to different music, obviously, when I'm lifting weights than when I'm, like, sitting on the porch with a cup of,
Totally.
not
Yes.
always, but for the most part. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes the weightlifting music will make it on the porch, but I rarely listen to the porch music when I'm doing some type of physical activity
Yeah.
where I need to be
Totally. Yeah.
really. But I think, yeah, find that connection, find the people, surround yourself with the people. If you're not at a place where you can necessarily speak loud and proud about love because it's just not your comfort level, that's okay. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you, that you're failing at love. For you, then I would say surround yourself with the people who are saying it so that you can hear it. Because the more we talk about those things, the positive things, and the way that we can give and nurture into each other, it's going to feed us. It's going to contribute
Yeah.
to our well-being, um, and how we help other people and how we receive the help we get from other people. Noting that there are areas in this world where there is devastation taking place. And I don't ever want to make it sound like, because Tracy-Ann and I are like, love is great and community is great and everything's
Yeah.
good, we're ignoring those very dark things that are taking place.
Yeah.
Rather, in contrast, the goal is if we could create a lot of joy and love in people and empower people to see the gifts that they have, we can start to go into those places and create the change that's needed with
That's right.
positivity.
That's right. That's exactly right. I mean, I think about, all of that a lot, right? I have a passion for animals, right? We see a lot of, animals getting hurt, right? In Africa, and, my husband and I go back there every year, and we go on safaris, and we're always trying to help protect, the innocent, right? We talk about children, right? You've got, things like mental health
Right.
happening now, and that's increasing, and, things like human trafficking, and I mean, all kinds of things. Like, I am so attuned to that. So it's not that, to your point, Deb, that it's not deep and it's not heavy, and that, we're not concerned. It's about how do you play a role in your society where you can actually impact the things that we know are happening and that we know have to change,
Right.
right? How do you do that? So I think that's a very, very important point, Deb, because it's not, life is complicated. The world is complex in general. We're complex, right? So how do you, but how do you, I always think about it as reciprocity. How do you pay it forward? How do you give back in your life, as leaders? And we are all leaders in our own right. Okay. Leader is not a title. It's the individual.
Mhm.
How do you, we are accountable to give back. I believe that's what we should be doing as humans. We're giving back to others as well. And so, to your point, it's how do we help, and how do we support, and how do we assist?
Yeah, absolutely. And on a day-to-day basis, I think we do it by simple acts of kindness like we talked about, and that's,
Yeah.
that's a big mission. And, you smile at somebody, you watch that person smile at somebody else. I mean, really doesn't have to always be these profound things. Profound things are great. It's just embracing those opportunities we have in our day-to-day life, right? To really recognize that the person, somebody else is there, somebody else has done something. Thank you for that. Thank you for holding the door open for me.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah.
love it. So do you wanna tell us a little bit more about the song that you just released? Where do we find it? And then, of course, your contact information, but I'll
Yes, absolutely. So, Ignite the Warrior is the first song that will be on the Warrior album, but it's out. It is on Spotify, it is on iTunes, it's on all the major platforms. And it is also, I have the lyric video in YouTube. So you can actually go and watch and actually get the words from YouTube, which is fantastic because you can sing along. And it has a little bit of an African function, a little bit of an African beat. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. Contact information, Instagram, tap_be the game changer. And I would love to spend more time listening, hearing, and getting feedback from all of you. So tap_be the game changer is probably the best way to find me.
Yeah, and and for those of you who, I say this, I try to say this, sometimes I forget, that are in my network that would like a direct introduction, because sometimes people just would prefer an introduction before reaching out. Please feel free to reach out to me. I love
Yeah.
connecting with people. So if you are in my network and you would like to meet Tracy-Ann and you're like, "Can you tee up a, Instagram message or whatever?" I will absolutely do that. So please reach out. If anything from today's conversation has struck an idea or a question with you and you just like to connect with one or both of us, please do. I do note that I'm not always the most super responsive because I completely answer all of my own messages. And so sometimes it takes a little longer than I would like just to try to get to stuff. So if I don't respond promptly, it's not because I'm ignoring you, it's just because I haven't had a chance yet. But we really do value these types of connections and conversations. I'm 100% confident that Tracy-Ann and I are going to be doing some cool stuff within the next year. I don't know what
Cool
it is
stuff.
yet.
So
Cool.
cool. It's
like,
gonna happen, Deb. I know.
It's like when you just know, you're like, there's stuff coming. I could just see it. I could
I
see
can
all the
just
little things
tell.
happening
Oh
today.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. It's happening.
So, thank you for being here. What is a final thought that you'd like to leave with the audience in addition to all of the other beautiful things that you said? A final thought.
I want everyone on this call to write out their bucket list. Everyone, write out your bucket list. I've actually made everyone in my family do this, my nephews, everyone. And start tackling those items one by one. Don't have to do it all. One by one. Bucket list. Have to do the bucket list one by one. Get it ready. And actually, send it to Deb and I. We'll hold you accountable. I would love that.
We should start a bucket list club.
Yeah, let's do a bucket list club. But that to me is what every human being should do, because having started it, probably 20 years later, I am loving it. So do it, please do it.
I mean, if nothing else, the joy on both of our faces is exuding from having accomplished things. And look, it's not always easy to get those bucket list items. I mean, it's not just like you're like, I'm going to do this one and it happens. Sometimes there's some effort involved, but man, I'll tell you, the effort is part of it. It's like going through that journey to accomplish that thing. And there's just so many pieces. I mean, we could go on for another 45 minutes, but we're going to stop. We'll save it. We might have to do a part 2 of this conversation. But yes. So, all right, bucket list. I've written things down at times, but I don't think I have an actual all-inclusive bucket list. So I will have to do that. I think that's a fun family thing, right? Sit down with your kids. What are the things you want to do? What do you want to definitely do? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you got to do it.
All right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Tracy-Ann, thank you for being here. I appreciate your kind words, all of your wisdom that you shared. And of course, thank you to everybody that has joined us. You will forever be part of this conversation because you consumed it in whatever way that was, whether you were with us live or with us watching it recorded. And we're hopeful that you are able to take something from it and use it in a way that's going to head you in the direction that you are going to be the most peace-filled about. So that is my hope for you. So take care. Have a great rest of what are we on? Thursday, right? It's Thursday. Have a great rest of the week. Say that 5 times fast. And we love you all very much.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Deb. So good to be with you and so good to be with everyone on the call. Awesome.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.